The world's fastest growing cities are racing toward a breaking point. Crumbling infrastructure, unchecked sprawl, and worsening climate shocks have created urban powder kegs waiting to explode. Yet while the warning signs flash red, governments and developers keep building higher, faster, and cheaper, ignoring the systems that keep a city alive. These cities aren't just struggling, they're ticking time bombs. Today, cities we celebrate as marvels of human progress are, in truth, sitting on faults, sinking in silence, or waiting for one more storm to finish what decades of neglect began. From Asia to the Americas, the same pattern repeats. Bad planning, rapid growth, and climate chaos. It's happening right now, in real places where millions live, work, and hope. Some cities are already too far gone, and the scariest part? No one's fixing them. Let's start with a megacity that's quite literally sinking beneath the sea, Jakarta. This city is the residence of 30+ million people. It's a city of contradictions, with luxury towers beside flooded alleys, high-tech malls across from crumbling shanties. On the surface, it's a portrait of rapid progress, but underneath, it's collapsing. Jakarta is sinking faster than any major city on Earth. Some districts drop by 25 centimeters a year, nearly the height of a ruler. In parts of North Jakarta, the ground has already fallen more than 4 meters in just a few decades. At street level, that means entire neighborhoods now sit below sea level. The ocean presses against seawalls that creak with every tide, and when the monsoon rains arrive violently, the water has nowhere to go, so it rises. Cars become boats, homes vanish overnight, and commuters wade chest deep through what used to be intersections. But why is Jakarta sinking? It's simple and tragic. The city was built without a reliable water system. Most people still can't get piped water, so they dig wells and pump groundwater directly from beneath their homes. Every time they do, the earth compresses just a little more, like a sponge losing its air. Multiply that by millions of households, and the entire city begins to deflate. And because the groundwater table drops, the land dries, cracks, and loses its strength. Buildings tilt, roads buck, and the ocean moves in. At this moment, Jakarta's floods have become legendary. The 2007 deluge swallowed over half the city. More than 400,000 people were displaced. Electricity failed, hospitals closed, and in the poorest neighborhoods, families survived by tying their furniture to the ceiling with ropes so it wouldn't float away. But here's the painful irony. For Jakarta's wealthier residents, the floods are little more than an inconvenience. For the poor, they're life-changing. In low-lying districts like Maru-Baru, homes sit on stilts surrounded by permanent brown water. Children play beside flooded drains and the smell of rot never leaves. Yet, every year, new developments keep going up. Shiny towers, gated communities, and shopping complexes. Jakarta keeps building upward even as the ground beneath them disappears. However, the government's answer to that issue was to build higher. In 2014, officials launched the Great Garuda Project, a colossal bird-shaped seawall stretching across Jakarta Bay. The plan promised safety, hold back the ocean, reclaim land, and create new islands for development. But environmentalists called it a fantasy. Trapping Jakarta's filthy river water behind a concrete wall would create a toxic lagoon. Fishermen would lose their access to the sea, and the people most at risk are the ones living right on the shoreline. By 2019, the project was collapsing under its own weight. Budgets ballooned, political support vanished, and the city was no safer than before. So, in 2022, Indonesia announced something radical. They decided to move the capital entirely. The new capital, Nusantara, is being built hundreds of miles away on the island of Borneo, marketed as a smart green city of the future. It's supposed to be clean, efficient, and above sea level, but there is a problem. You can relocate politicians, but not populations. Jakarta still holds nearly a tenth of Indonesia's people. Factories, ports, and offices that power the nation's economy can't simply pack up and leave. For most residents, there's no escape plan. They're staying because they have nowhere else to go. Every rainy season, families pray their homes will hold. Some raise their floors each year with new layers of concrete. Others move their belongings to the roof until the water retreats. Imagine living like that, not knowing if your street will still exist next week. Scientists warn that by 2050, over a third of Jakarta could be permanently underwater. That means millions of climate refugees, massive economic loss, and a crisis that could reshape Indonesia entirely. And yet the city keeps expanding. Developers build new luxury condos right beside evacuation zones. Billboards promise a modern lifestyle, even as water laps at their foundations. Jakarta is a city pretending everything's fine. A city living in denial. But denial doesn't stop the ocean, it just buys time. And time is running out. Meanwhile, Jakarta's story is not unique. From Manila to Bangkok to Dhaka, cities built on deltas are slowly drowning. Each city faces the same impossible equation: too many people, too little planning, and a planet that's heating up. The future isn't waiting for them to act. It's already at the door. And as we look westward, across the Pacific, there's another place where water rules everything. A city that already learned what happens when you ignore the warnings. New Orleans. New Orleans is a city with music spilling out of bars, jazz echoing through the streets, colors and culture everywhere. It feels eternal and unstoppable, but the truth is that it's built in the wrong place and kept alive by engineering and prayer. Most of New Orleans sits below sea level, The Mississippi River borders one side, the Gulf of Mexico the other. To survive, the city relies on levees, pumps, and walls, a man-made fortress holding back nature. But fortresses fail. In August 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit. The storm surge smashed through the levees. Water poured in, flooding 80% of the city. Over 1,800 people died. The world watched in disbelief as American citizens clung to rooftops, waving for rescue. The Superdome turned into a crowded refuge, its roof ripped open by the wind. Bodies floated in the streets. Entire neighborhoods like the lower 9th Ward were erased. But here's the part most people forget. This wasn't a surprise. Scientists, engineers, and journalists had warned for years that the levee system was weak. Reports were written, budgets requested, but maintenance was cut. Funding delayed, responsibility shifted. So when Katrina came, the system failed exactly as predicted. It was a disaster foretold and ignored. After the storm, America vowed never again. The US Army Corps of Engineers spent $14 billion rebuilding the flood defenses. Massive floodgates now guard the city's entrances. Pumps the size of houses stand ready to drain water faster than ever before, and for a while it worked. When Hurricane Ida struck in 2021, the new system held. New Orleans survived, but beneath the concrete and optimism, the same slow collapse continues because New Orleans is sinking. The ground beneath the city was once swamped with layers of soft silt laid down by the Mississippi River over thousands of years. That silt needs fresh sediment to stay stable, but when humans walled off the river with levees, they cut off that natural supply, so the land began compacting. Every year, parts of the city sink 1 to 2 centimeters. It doesn't sound like much, until you remember sea levels are rising too. That means the bowl is getting deeper, while the water outside is getting higher. Add stronger hurricanes, heavier rain, and higher tides, and you get the same equation as Jakarta. The water always wins. Even now, small floods are constant. Heavy rain overwhelms the pumps. Manhole covers pop open like geysers. Cars stall in ankle-deep water that turns knee-deep within minutes. And just like Jakarta, it's the poorest communities that suffer first. The lower 9th Ward floods during simple summer storms. Some homes have been rebuilt 3, 4, even 5 times. Others stand empty, doors sealed, paint peeling. Insurance prices are exploding. Some companies have stopped offering flood coverage entirely. Meanwhile, new luxury apartments rise on slightly higher ground, promoted as safe zones. The geography of privilege is literally measured in inches. And outside the levees, the wetlands that once shielded the city keep vanishing. Every hour, Louisiana loses a piece of land the size of a football field. Oil canals, rising seas, and erosion have shredded the coastline. The barrier islands that softened hurricanes are nearly gone. So when the next big storm comes, there will be less and less to protect New Orleans. Still, the spirit of the city refuses to die. Walk through the French Quarter and you would think nothing was wrong. Brass bands play, tourists sip cocktails and dance in the streets. But behind the music, locals check weather apps and evacuation maps. But they're not the only ones, because across the Atlantic, another iconic city is slowly being swallowed by the sea. And across the Americas, a capital of 20 million people is collapsing into the earth itself. Venice. A beautiful city of canals, gondolas, and ancient palaces where the air smells of pastries and the sea. But Venice has a secret the millions of tourists streaming in each year don't see. Over the last century, parts of Venice have dropped by 23 centimeters, and the land continues to compact every year. Combine that with rising sea levels, and you get a disaster that's both slow and relentless. The problem isn't just the tides. Venice was built on wooden pilings, driven deep into marshy soil. For centuries, those pilings held, and the city thrived, but modern industry and heavy tourism have stressed the foundations, and then there is the water. High tides, known locally as acqua alta, flood the streets multiple times a year. Shops pump out water, residents build temporary barriers, and tourists scramble to keep their shoes dry. But the floods are getting worse. In November 2019, Venice faced one of its worst floods in decades. Water levels rose over 1.87 meters, soaking historic churches, museums, and homes. Priceless art was damaged. Residents lost irreplaceable belongings. The government tried to stop the water with the ambitious MOSE project, a system of 78 mobile barriers designed to temporarily isolate the Venetian lagoon from the Adriatic Sea during high tides. Technically, it's a marvel of engineering. In practice, it's been plagued with corruption scandals, delays, and technical problems. When the barriers work, they can hold back the sea. When they fail, the city floods anyway. And even if the barriers function perfectly, they cannot stop the city from sinking from beneath, because Venice is not just threatened by the ocean. It's being eaten away by gravity, human activity, and the very foundations that have held it for centuries. Meanwhile, the irony is brutal. Venice is a city built on water. Its economy thrives on tourists coming to see a city unlike any other, but that very success accelerates the problem. Massive cruise ships churn through the lagoon, creating waves that erode the canals and foundations. Hotels and shops overuse groundwater, causing subtle subsidence. The locals live in constant fear. Every acqua alta, every storm surge, could be the one that the city doesn't recover from. And yet, like New Orleans, Life goes on. The streets are full of laughter, music, and bustling markets. Unfortunately, the city is alive even when it slowly dies. Mexico City, one of the largest cities on Earth with over 21 million people, and almost all of them live on a foundation that's literally sinking. Mexico City was built on a lake. The Aztecs' capital, Tenochtitlan, thrived on the soft lake beds of the Valley of Mexico. Spanish colonists drained the lake to build the city we know today. Over centuries, the water beneath the city was pumped out for farming, drinking, and development, and the ground has been collapsing ever since. Parts of Mexico City sink up to 30 centimeters per year, which is almost a foot. Buildings tilt, streets crack, and pipelines rupture. Some neighborhoods now sit meters lower than when they were built. The problem is compounded by over-extraction of groundwater. The city pumps massive amounts of water to meet the needs of residents and industry. Every liter taken out weakens the soil beneath, accelerating the sink. Imagine trying to build a skyscraper on a sponge. Now imagine millions of buildings on that sponge. This is Mexico City. The subway system built in tunnels through unstable soil frequently suffers damage. During heavy rains, low-lying neighborhoods flood. Even though the city is hundreds of kilometers from the ocean, the city is sinking into its own lake bed. Efforts to fix the problem have been piecemeal. Authorities have built pumping systems, reinforced buildings, and even attempted to refill aquifers artificially, but the scale of the problem is staggering. With 21 million people living on unstable ground, there is no quick fix. And the cost? Tens of billions of dollars, far beyond what Mexico can sustain. Like Jakarta and New Orleans, Mexico City faces a simple equation. The city cannot grow indefinitely, the water cannot stay away forever, and nature will reclaim its territory. So here's the truth. Jakarta, New Orleans, Venice, Mexico City all look different, sound different, and exist in different parts of the world, but their stories are very similar. A city built on unstable ground, overpopulation, resource extraction that weakens the foundations, infrastructure that can't keep pace, and a rising tide of climate change, storms, or subsidence. People have sounded the alarms for decades, and yet governments often ignore the warnings. They pretend that engineering alone can save them. They pretend that money, technology, and innovation can keep the cities alive forever. But some cities cannot be saved, especially without radical measures. In the end, cities are the crown jewels of human civilization. They're monuments to ingenuity, culture, and resilience. But they're also fragile. For every iconic skyline, there's a foundation cracking beneath it. Jakarta, New Orleans, Venice, Mexico City, they're early warning systems. They show us what happens when ambition outpaces reason, when humans ignore the laws of physics, when we build where we shouldn't. But they aren't the only ones. Bangkok, Manila, Dhaka, Lagos, Shanghai all face similar fates. The question isn't whether these cities will survive in the next century, because when cities fail, societies do too. When the water comes, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care about wealth, culture, or history. It only moves forward. Ignore the warning signs, and the ground will eventually swallow what you've built. After all, the real test of our civilization isn't how high we can build our cities, but whether we have the wisdom to keep them standing.